Welcome to Episode 2, Part 2 of my two-way sketchbook, One Painting, Two Ways series. Today we'll be creating a watercolor painting of a butterfly. In Part 1, I used the same reference photo for a colored pencil painting. This time, I'll be using Kuretake Gansai Tambi watercolors. I begin the painting by transferring my image onto my sketchbook page with a Prismacolor Ebony Graphite pencil, applied to the reverse side of the image. Then I trace the main shapes onto the page. I have time-lapsed through this step, but for today's video I have not significantly cut the painting process, allowing the painting to progress in near real time for anyone who wishes to paint with me. I have included a link for my reference photo in the description. Note that when I tape the reference image I'm tracing onto the sketchbook, that I mark the position of the edge of the paper on the top and bottom of my page, as well as the upper and lower boundaries of the tape, just in case I need to place the image back onto the sketchbook's page later after I have removed it. This is just an insurance policy in case I miss tracing an area and need to add it at a later time. Now I am putting a little bit of liquid dish soap onto my ceramic palette to coat the brush I'll be using to apply masking fluid to areas on the butterfly which need to be protected from the dark colors I'll be applying on the wings. I also tape a copy of my reference photo over the colored pencil drawing to protect it from any accidental watercolor drips. After coating my brush, I apply the masking fluid to all the areas where there are pops of color on the wings. Again, I have time-lapsed through applying the masking fluid and the waiting period for it to dry. While I'm finishing masking the areas I need to protect, I want to discuss the Kuretake Gansai Tambi watercolors I'll be using for this painting. I'm using a mixture of colors from the 48 color set, as well as the Art Nouveau set, the Sumi colors, and the Graphite colors. For the butterfly's wings and body, I use Raw Umber Deep, Sumi Violet, Sumi Brown, Sumi Blue, Graphite Brown, Beige Gray, Grayish Blue, and Blue Gray Deep. For the spots, I use Gray, Beige Gray, Burnt Sienna, Mars Yellow, Indian Red, and Pale Aqua. For the leaves, I use Saffron Yellow, Green Gold, Olive Green, Greenish Yellow, Pea Green, Ivy Green, Sap Green Dark, and Green Gray. And I also use Beige Gray on the stem. For the azalea's flowers, I use Rose Madder Deep, Carmine, Rose Madder, Cobalt Violet, Purple, Pale Pink, and Cherry Blossom Pink. I'm starting out with the upper wing. After activating my paints, I wet the wing area with clean water, then begin with Graphite Brown, Raw Umber Deep, and Beige Gray, focusing the darker colors on the lower and outside regions of the upper wing, applying the lighter colors to the center of the large upper area. Note that I am only working on the upper wing closest to us, the butterfly's left wing, while leaving the right wing unpainted for now. After this initial application of color, while it's still wet, I use the reverse end of my brush to imprint the lines of the wing segments. The Princeton Velvetouch brush I'm using comes to a bit of a point on the handle end, and this is useful for making these types of marks, but many brushes are smoothed over on the end of the handle. If this is the case with your brush, try a small tipped etching tool if you have one available, but a toothpick should work just as well. I marked the segments. I needed to take a break from painting. So beginning again, I had to re-wet the area I had already painted with clean water to apply another layer wet on wet. I begin again with graphite brown. Now I build the color profile by adding Sumi Violet. I also add Sumi Brown to the colors I'm working with for added depth of shadow on the wing. Building the deep violet in the wing, here I add cobalt violet to the lower edge of the upper wing. After wetting the body area, I apply an initial layer of gray, followed by raw umber deep and graphite brown on the lower body. While the wing and body dry, I begin work on the azalea flowers. I will continue working wet on wet, beginning with my lightest value with pale pink. Now I'm adding purple to the flower bud, followed by Rose Madder Deep. Moving on to the flower underneath the butterfly, again I begin with wetting the area and applying pale pink. Now, cherry blossom pink. Here, I'm moving around the color I've placed on the bud and removing some here and there with a damp brush wiped on a towel. I'm adding cherry blossom pink to the lower flower. Here's where I begin to have some issues that become more serious as the painting progresses. I've got a little bleed on the upper right of the petal. I let my water move outside of my sketched boundary and the pigment necessarily follows. Luckily, the Kuretake paints lift really well, but I've also got too much water on the flower petal, so as I lift it off, more moves into its place. This is where you can definitely learn from my mistake. After fiddling with it for a while, I just pull up most of the paint from the top of that petal, leave it for a bit, and move back to the bud with more purple. I'm adding cobalt violet here for the deepest part of the shadow on the bud. Moving on and allowing the flowers I've started to dry, I now start on the lower wing with clean water over the entire area. I pull over blue-gray deep and sumi blue. I begin adding blue-gray deep to the lower right side of the wing. I'm bringing in sumi blue for the darkest blue area of the wing. For the front of this part of the wing, I'm dabbing in graphite brown, then deepening the color with sumi violet. Here, I'm etching in the wing segments like I did for the upper part of the wing with the pointy end of my brush. After creating the segments, I move the paint around to fill the etchings until it looks the way I want. I add more graphite brown to the front part of the lower wing, then begin to darken the color on the upper wing. I'm going to start trying to tackle the flowers again, starting with the petal that gave me so much trouble earlier and pale pink. I'm going back to the lower wing while the flower petal dries, trying to avoid making another mess like I did earlier. I'm applying blue-gray deep to the right side of the lower wing. Back to the petal with cherry blossom pink and rose madder. After applying color over the bud and this petal, I'm afraid the graphite lines from tracing my image will show through the pale colors of the rest of the flowers, so I'm erasing all but a hint of the traced lines. It's helpful to have a brush eraser to remove the eraser crumbs from the paper. Now I'm adding rose madder deep, then more purple to help define the shadows on the bud. Now another application of cobalt violet. I'm adding carmine to the petal. I'm trying to create the illusion of the folded petal by slowly building layers of deeper colors and implied shadows. More purple for the deeply shadowed area at the bottom of this petal. Back to the wing with Sumi Violet, then Sumi Blue. I'm moving on to the leaves while the wing and flowers continue to dry. I'm starting with Ivy Green. I got this area a little too wet, so I'm picking up the extra with a damp brush and dabbing it off on a towel. I started to work on the main flower with clean water, but I changed my mind and moved to the back wing. After applying clean water to this small area, I begin with beige gray and then add raw umber deep. Again, I am etching the segments of the wing with the handle end of my brush. Back again to the petal. I'm not happy with how dark the color is on the upper side of the petal, so I'm using clean water to lift off some with a damp brush. On hindsight, I think I should have just left this alone. I definitely ended up overworking this area later on, and it causes me a lot of issues as I continue through the painting. But I'm learning the medium along with you, hoping you can benefit from my mistakes. And goodness, there's going to be some mistakes. Now I'm moving back again to the rear wing. I'm just moving color around with a clean, damp brush. My internal battle with frustration that the flowers are not developing according to my plan has begun to make me careless. I've dripped on the page accidentally and now need to clean that up too. I'm beginning a spiral here, and my fear is that I'm circling the proverbial drain. Starting to fiddle with the petal once again, this time with rose madder and cherry blossom pink, followed by carmine on the bud. I'm trying to layer color like regular watercolor, but I have lost sight of the reality that Kuretake Gansai Tambis do not behave like traditional watercolors, and I'm too new at the medium to easily adapt. Just wait, I'm digging myself into a deeper and deeper hole here. I have decided to leave the flowers be for a bit, and I've got back to the leaves with sap green dark to add dimension to the leaf behind the butterfly. Now green-gray for even more depth. Now I am painting in the stem with beige gray. I'm using saffron yellow for the brightly colored leaf beneath the petal that has been giving me so much trouble. While it's still wet, I'm accenting the darker spots with olive green. Now I'm using ivy green for the leaf immediately underneath the butterfly. I'm using raw umber deep to give a dark shadow to the underside of the stem and for the area where the leaf connects to the stem. For the leaves I'm working on now, I pick up sap green dark, then shadow the leaves with green gray. I'm picking up pea green for these light areas around the flowers. I also use greenish yellow. I'm finally coming back to work more on the flowers, but I'm starting the main flower this time with clean water over the area. I begin with my lightest value again, pale pink, followed by my next lightest value, cherry blossom pink. I've picked up rose madder, working it on the petal and bud one more time, followed by a little more cobalt violet on the shadow side of the bud. I'm moving a little more quickly now, going back to the leaves with olive green for more detail. Now I begin to alternate working on the leaves and the flowers, still moving more quickly. I have begun to think I should just get this over with because the more I work it, the more I'm beginning to feel I'm overworking it, and the feeling that I've lost control of the painting is increasing. For this part of the flower, I'm using Rose Madder Deep, Rose Madder, and Carmine to create the shadowed area. Now I'm adding in a little bit of purple. I'm applying a little bit more raw umber deep to the back wing. Once again, I've gotten an area too wet. The water is getting away from me, and I need to pick up extra paint and water. Okay, let's try this again one more time. Leaving the flowers alone again, I move back to the leaves with sap green. Then I begin to pick up my greens randomly to create leaves. I'm not trying to follow the reference exactly. I'm just trying to fill the space with greenery that feels natural and has shadow and depth to accent the butterfly, which I'm trying to keep as the focal point. Here I start placing color on the butterfly's head with graphite brown. I accidentally get some of this very dark paint on the flower, and here's where the painting starts to go totally wrong. I'm trying desperately to clean this up, and the frustration grows to a breaking point. I'm sure you can tell that I normally do voiceovers on these long videos because the ambient noise from my dogs and whatever I'm listening to while I paint is distracting on the video, but the audio you're about to hear in a minute is directly from my recording.
Okay. This is my practice. I have reached a cut your losses moment. So what I'm going to do is cut this one out and tape it into my scrapbook. I love the way the practice turned out. This, not so much. I'm going to see if there's anything I can do to salvage this. I'll at least finish it, but I've just about had it. I'm fighting the paper, and I'm at my wit's end. It's just not turning out the way I had hoped. Stuff's bleeding everywhere, and I'm fighting the paper because it's buckling and peeling. And this is not supposed to happen. This did not happen here. So, this series may end after only 2 episodes because I don't know if I'm going to do this again. I'm going to let this dry. And I'll come back and see if I can do anything else with it.
And here I am, back at it. I actually left this overnight and slept on my problem. I often find that when I'm overwhelmed by a problem, not just a problem with my artwork, but in any of the problems that life throws at me every day, it helps to take a step away from it before deciding what to do next. Take time to breathe, to pray, and to reflect on the big picture. And I find in my faith that my Heavenly Father also cares about the little things in my life, and that His still small voice will whisper suggestions if I take the time to listen. And now I've got a plan. Time to remove the masking fluid to finish up the wings. I have a rubber eraser for the masking fluid, but I usually just use my fingers rubbing lightly over it so that it starts to gently peel away. I've pulled out a teeny tiny brush for this next part. It's a Simply Simmons 3.0 spotter that I got at a local art supply store years ago for use with my acrylic paintings. It works perfectly for the detail work I need for the spots on the wings. I'm working with gray, diluting the color a bit on the lid of one of my Meeden 12 well ceramic palettes. I add some grayish blue to the gray on my palette for the darker spots within the spots. Here, I've picked up pale aqua for the lightest of the bluish spots. I'm working on the orangest spots now with Mars Yellow. I'll also be using burnt sienna for the darker spots within the spots. I'm touching up the darker areas and defining boundaries with blue-gray deep. For the spots on the butterfly's body, I'm using beige gray and I'm touching up with graphite brown. More touch up here, this time on the leaves with olive green. It's cherry blossom pink again on the flowers. Then more rose madder and pale pink. Now, finally, I've come to the solution for my problems with the flowers. I'm putting away my Kuretake watercolors. I have been trying to paint exclusively in watercolor, but in order to save this, I need to complete this as a multimedia painting, and my second media in this case will be Caran Neocolor II water-soluble wax pastels. I also pull out my handy-dandy color chart and my sketchbook page where I did my practice painting so I can check colors before I apply them if I need to, and I dive into making the corrections I need in order to salvage this painting. I will blend these colors with a damp brush as needed. Now, I will touch up the color on the spots to accent the colors. I'm using Mars Yellow, Burnt Sienna, and I've also added Indian Red for the darkest areas of the orange spots, along with more grayish blue on the bluish spots. And it's finally complete. Time to sign and date it. At the end, I'm pleased with how it turned out. I learned a lot with this painting, and I hope you learned from my mishaps as well. I will have more installments of my two-way sketchbook coming in the future, so stay tuned. Thank you for painting with me today. See you next time.